again. Welcome everyone. If this is your first time here, welcome. If this is you coming back, welcome back. We must be doing something right. We are always glad to have you here. Please don't forget that you can submit your books, the ones you have on your shelf that are read, unread. You can always submit your writings, and you can recommend others. We love to talk about books here. No subject is off the table. We like to discuss what we got on our shelves, and our shelves have a variety. And I think my offering today is definitely a testament to that. I don't think it'll surprise anyone that this book was on my shelf, but I think it would surprise some that I'm sharing it. And it's one of those books that, we talked about this before. We have so many books that when we get ready to share, sometimes we like, no, did I share this one? Should I share this one? This a little far out there. And I asked myself, what made me feel that way? I got all these books on my shelf. Am I ashamed of any of these books? Do I not want people to know some of the stuff I'm reading? I asked myself that years ago when I would work on putting together interesting talks in the community. You always want to bring something interesting and add something to someone's plate. And again, like you said, information is not knowledge now. You know what I'm saying? It's just information. It's what you do with it, what you apply it with. And this book is a perfect example of application with good intention. We're going to put it like that. And my offering this week is by William W. Hewitt, and it is Hypnosis for Beginners. Hypnosis for Beginners. Now, I'm sure that nobody is surprised I have a book like this on my shelf. Here's the author on the back. Okay. I'm surprised nobody, I'm quite sure nobody is surprised I have a book like this on my shelf. But let me tell you about this book. So, I have always been a skeptical person. I grew up with a Leo mom. Shout out to mommy. Leo season is coming. Miss you, mama. But my mom was a comedian, and whenever it was something that was outside of her depth or something that she didn't really know, she would say, well, I'm from Missouri, and that's the show me state. You're going to have to show me. And one of the things I never wanted nobody to show me was hypnosis. It made me weird. I was like, wait a minute. So somebody can take you and program you and not realize that we've been programmed all along, So the lack of knowledge with knowledge, you be confused sometimes, right? Now, Nick, I know you had a personal experience with hypnosis, so we're going to get to that, but I want to finish with this book. I want to get to this book. So this book here, like I said, is written by William W. Hewitt, and I came across this book like I have with many of my others in that search for a better me, a better Roo, a deeper Roo, a healed Roo, all of that good stuff like that. So this book was first written in 1986 with several printings after. The one I have here is a fifth printing, and that's 2002. And what I tell people is that this is one of those books where I got it, I went through it, and I laid it down. And for different reasons. So how did I come across the book? Anybody who's done any work with MaWu Lisa Temple before, done any work with me, knows that I came across a book about almost 20 years ago called Journey of the Souls, Dr. Michael P. Newton, and it changed my life. It changed my life not because it was something in there that I had never heard so much as the information hit different. It comes a point, I think, in people's journey where, and again, this is why we go back to our books. I think sometimes when you read something, it just goes, you know, over your head in one ear out the other, just like, you know, the wisdom of Umi and father and grandmother. Sometimes, you know, they can tell us something and we be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And 20 years later, we be like, oh, wow, they were right, you know. So I think, you know, with a lot of things that I pick up, even when I don't understand it or I feel like I'm not ready for it, one thing I've been really good at is saying to myself, I'm going to put this down so I think I'm ready for this thing. And when I was reading Dr. Newton's book, one of the things that became very clear is that even though everyone can um, uh, do hypnosis and receive hypnosis, for some people it's easy, for some people it's hard. Some people say they can't be hypnotized. I'm not here to argue that. That's between you and yourself. But what I will say is that he did mention people with certain kind of traumas that needed a little more assistance with something like hypnosis or past life regression, etc. Because the traumas were severe, and that if you experience some of these things, sometimes with a professional who's not familiar with those things, it can cause more damage in the waking life than good. Okay. So for me, you know, I don't make it any secrets. You know, I had a very interesting childhood and interesting foundation. One that makes me one of those people who need to be more cautious when dealing with hypnosis. So when I got this book, the reason I got it was because in Dr. Newton's book, he did talk about self-hypnosis versus going to someone and opening yourself and opening your vessel to someone to come in and you know help guide you along the way. Now as a yoga instructor, as a mindfulness coach, as a life coach, even in nursing, we have done guided meditations where we tell people, you know, imagine yourself laying on the beach and you feel the wind, and this is a form of self-talk, self-hypnosis that people use to calm themselves, etc., etc. But before I go further there, let's talk a little bit more about the book. So Mr. Hewitt has other books. One's called Hypnosis, just hypnosis, tea leaf reading, astrology for beginners, bridges to success and fulfillment, the art of self-talk, psychic development for beginners, self-hypnosis for a better life. He also has something that we don't even, a lot of people don't use no more. I still do. He has audio tapes. So those are cassette tapes for you people who want to know what they are. I should have had one to show you. This is a cassette tape. Uh, but the audio tapes that he has is Become Smoke Free through self-hypnosis, Psychic Workout through self-hypnosis, Relaxation and Stress Management through self-hypnosis, and Your Perfect Weight through self-hypnosis. Now, one of the things I like to mention is that if you notice, there were these cessation, the audio tapes were about changing the thing inside you. Um, a lot of people who experimented with hypnosis early on in the early stages dealt with it for these reasons, things like weight loss, to stop smoking, to stop drinking, and other things, I'm sure. But weight loss and smoking were the major two that saw commercial success and allowed it to be digested more commercially. Okay, because again, people just were just like me, very, very skeptical. Is this even real? Is it play acting? You know, 1, 2, 3, you're asleep. You know, it's like, yeah, right. But no, it does happen like that. It can happen like that. So let me tell you about the author, which, you know, for me, his background is very interesting. He's almost like L. Ron Hubbard for me, knowing that L. Ron Hubbard did Dianetics, but he was also a sci-fi writer. So it's like, wow, you know, you think about the broad range of what these people were able to write about, and it's almost impossible to think how those things came together until you really sit down and think about the connectiveness of everything. So William W. Hewitt is a freelance writer and the author of 8 books and several hypnosis audio tapes published by Llewellyn. He spent more than 30 years as a professional writer and editor in the computer, nuclear power, and mining industries. He is a certified clinical hypnotherapist and frequently lectures on hypnosis, mind power, self-improvement, metaphysics, and related subjects. This book, when I got it, was $9.95. And I loved it. And I got it. And there's a quote here from Silver Ravenwolf, which is the author of Ride the Silver Broomstick and The Stair to the Magical Cauldron and Angels and Companions to Magic. She says, I've taught students for several years using William Hewitt's exceptional hypnosis techniques. He's easy to understand and simple to implement step-by-step instructions have brought hundreds of readers to great heights in their personal success programs. Hypnosis for Beginners presents a dynamic course for self-improvement and gives you the power to control your life. I can attribute many of my own personal successes to Mr. Hewitt's techniques, and I definitely consider him a genius of our time. So that was the excerpt they have from one of the people who review his book in the back. And I mean, wow, what a testimony, right? So let's talk about the contents here. And I won't be long with this in the way of, going through all the different things, but I thought it was some important parts to point out for the person who may be like, well, do I want to pick up that book? Is that book for me? What I'll say is just take a listen and maybe you'll hear something that is of interest. So it's broken into 15 chapters, 3 parts, 15 chapters. Part 1 is hypnosis and self-hypnosis. Again, I got this book with the intention of using it for myself because of information I had researched, looking into hypnosis, going to someone to actually get some clarity on things and realize that self-hypnosis might be the way for me to go. In chapter 1, it talks about how to be a hypnotherapist. What is hypnosis? It talks about going into business, how to perform hypnosis exercises. Chapter 2, it talks about hypnosis routines and hypnosis, your first session, and what should be talked about that in that session. Basic relaxation and hypnosis routines. And then it goes on. Chapter 3, specific routines for controlling diet and eating habits and teaching self-hypnosis. Chapter 4, routines to reinforce suggestions previously given, the depth of hypnosis. And it just goes on here. It talks about self-image, using using your mind to imagine and envision things. Then in part 2, it talks about what I was talking about, that regression and self-regression. It starts to talk about recording scripts for yourself in order to be able to recall some of the information, etc. And again, you have to remember, when this work was being offered, it was really new. It was out there. For those who believed it, they believed it, but for those who didn't, this was just another line of voodoo, hoodoo, ya, ya, ya. You know, those crazy people think that stuff works. They just easily controlled, you know, etc., which is true to some extent. But again, it's much more to it than that. Part 3 is practical applications and supplemental information. And I can't express every chapter of this book is important because they're building blocks. If you skip around, you're gonna miss something, and it's gonna create an incomplete practice that may not yield the best outcome that it could have because you skip some steps, or there's some vital things that you need to understand about what you're seeing, etc., what you're hearing, what you're doing, what you come out remembering, etc., what you remember while you're there. And people say, well, where are you at? Listen, you're there. So let me just go over these parts in this third part, and then I'll read a couple of passages to you. So practical applications and supplemental information. It says suggestions. It gives you like 10 pages of suggestions. It says suggestions for a variety of purposes, including speaking skills, increasing self-confidence, and improving sexual performance. Chapter 10, other kinds of hypnosis. We are children. I promise you, we are. That's what makes this part funny. Chapter 10, other kinds of hypnosis. Hypnosis for children, group hypnosis, and stage hypnosis. Chapter 11, additional case histories, examples of techniques used for a variety of cases. Chapter 12, it talks a little bit more about visualization. So they have something called the seashore trip routine, the balloon countdown, test taking, migraines, and smoking. Again, it goes back to those self-correction type things. In chapter 13, it deals with more of self-hypnosis, exercises and cases and uses for self-hypnosis. And then 14 and 15 talk about instructions for group situations, habit control, phobias, use with senior citizens and shut-ins, pain control, healing, business situations, spiritual contacts, and other situations and purposes. And in 15, it just talks about entering the realm of psychic experience and summary. So as you can imagine, this book, although it's only 259 pages, right? And that's what the summary is. The summary is just page 258 and 259. This book has a lot of information. When I say this book is one of those little but packed old books, it really is. One of the things I like is not a lot of fluff in here. It's like, this is how you do it. These are the steps. Write them down, memorize them, do them. The more you do it, it's done. Is no, well, first you have to, nah, straight to the point. He gives you the routines, etc. in here. So let me read to you his thoughts on that. He starts with, hypnosis is a lot like daydreaming. When you daydream, you alter your state of consciousness to the alpha frequency region and engage in your fantasies. All the while, you are conscious and aware, and yet you remain oblivious to external distractions. Daydreaming is a perfectly normal, safe, and healthy phenomena that we all engage in from time to time. Now, anybody that's hung out with me know I love doing my mom movies. I love doing my mom movies. I do it when people are talking. I do it when I'm sitting by myself. I do it when I'm watching TV, listening to music, anything. And it's just one of those times where I'll sit and I will close my eyes and I can see what the person is saying. And I've practiced that since I was a little girl, and it's always made reading so much fun for me, because when I read something, I am actually there. I that's why I'm mindful about what I ingest, you know what I'm saying, visually and audibly, because the simple fact is easy for me to see it. And once you can see it, it's there. You know what I mean? So it says hypnosis is a technique that enables you to achieve this altered state of consciousness, the daydream state, deliberately, and direct your attention to specific goals in order to achieve them. Like daydreaming, hypnosis is a perfectly normal, safe, and healthy phenomenon. In hypnosis, daydreaming, you are conscious and aware. You remain oblivious, but both daydreaming and hypnosis, your minds adjust. The difference is that in hypnosis, your mind is directed to a specific beneficial goal which you wish to achieve, and not to the fantasies. Because you know for yourself, when you let in a fantasy unfold, if you've been so fortunate to be able to do some mind work, when you let a fantasy unfold, you don't always know what's going to happen. It's just happening. But when you go in deliberately with self-hypnosis, you are going in with a goal to say, i.e., I am going to stop smoking, I am going to stop eating, I'm going to eat less, I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to whatever the thing is for the beneficial goals. So they have here quitting smoking, dieting, improving the self-image, overcoming phobias and fears. You hear to talk about speaking. For some people, speaking can be polarizing. So they go and they do things like Toastmasters, and other people do things like this. They sit and they talk to themselves. I can speak when I'm in the room. I can do this. And a really simple but and basic example of that is when they tell you, when you're standing on stage, imagine everybody in the audience in a certain way. In this way, it takes your focus off of the nervousness of your mind, allows you to be able to relax. We remember we talked about Waterboy, the movie, and how he saw the coach as the big baby. You know what I'm saying? Something that allows you to be able to realize, I'm in control of this situation. I'm controlling this narrative, and I'm creating this pathway for me to be able to reset goal through talking to myself, self-talk, talk therapy, right? So it says, when you've completed hypnosis for beginners, you will know how to hypnotize others or yourself for any beneficial, worthwhile purpose. Throughout this book, you will find complete word-by-word hypnosis techniques and case examples to illustrate specific points. Nothing is left for you to wonder about. You will even learn how to modify the techniques in the book to develop your own procedures. If you want to learn hypnosis as part of a get-rich scheme or exercise control over others, forget it. It won't work. You will not find these procedures in this book. However, if you want to expand your awareness, reshape and enrich your life or the lives of others, and do so in a spirit of brotherhood and love, then read on. Hypnosis is one of the most valuable tools in the world today for the enrichment of lives. Okay. So I thought that was important that we mention that, because one of the things that I found, even for myself, is and you'll hear from the author himself, he mentions it as well, is the unethical behavior of some people who learn learn these techniques. So I want to just go to a specific part here, because it's very important that I mentioned this. Is everybody having fun with this? I know I am. Even just going back into this book made me remember why I brought it out, why I got it in the first place. Where is that part?
Very fascinating.
You know, I can't wait to talk to you, Nick. I can't wait to talk to you. For all of y'all who missed it, Nick got hypnotized. So this I mean, I was so surprised that he went and did it, but I was so glad that he did, so he could tell us about it.
Oh no, I didn't get it. I saw other people.
Well, you saw other people get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the author talks about his experiences, okay? And I ask you to please just bear with me, because all of this is important, because the questions that were being asked then are some of the same questions that I ask now about the ethics and the methods, et cetera, in shady and unsavory people. So he says, my experiences. This is a short little part in the introduction here. For over 25 years, I've been practicing hypnosis and have hypnotized hundreds of people in almost every conceivable situation. When I first started, I practiced part-time on weekends and in the evenings with no charge to my subjects, enabling me to learn and hone my hypnosis skills. During this time, I earned my living as a technical writer. Because I'm an altruistic person, hypnosis gave me the chance to help others. In 1976, the demands on my time became so great that I decided to go into hypnosis full-time as a business, at which time I charged $25 per session, which was $10 to $25 per session less than other hypnotists. I have a fanatical dislike for greed, gluttony. I have a fanatical dislike for greed, which explains my lower fees. Nonetheless, in spite of high expenses, including rent, advertising, and phone charges, I still did quite well. Then 2 events occurred within a few months of each other that destroyed the hypnosis market in my metropolitan area. 2 hypnotists, one a physician and the other one a psychologist, were indicted on criminal charges in non-related cases. The physician was found guilty of massive and flagrant misuse of hypnosis for personal gain to the detriment of his patients, and his medical license was revoked, but no jail sentence was imposed. In the case of the psychologist, I was the one who filed the initial charges against him with the state attorney general's office. The ensuing investigation revealed that I had only seen the tip of a huge, ugly iceberg, and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The media coverage of these 2 cases was massive, and all hypnotists were tarred with the same brush. The result was that it was nearly impossible to earn a dime as a hypnotist for quite some time. I went back to technical writing for a living for a while, practicing hypnosis on the side once again. In 1992, I decided to retire for the most part and devote my time to freelance writing, giving occasional workshops on psychic development and doing occasional hypnosis in special cases and traveling for pleasure. My purpose for writing this book is to present hypnosis as the honorable, beneficial skill that it is. Whether you practice self-hypnosis in the quiet solitude of your room or with a loved one or a friend, the benefits can be enormous. A husband and wife can draw closer in love, harmony, and understanding more than they ever dreamed possible just by practicing hypnosis together for common goals. In self-hypnosis, you can draw closer to your higher self and through that higher self to connect to all others. There are really no negative aspects of hypnosis. If you approach it with integrity, you reap the beneficial benefits and results. So I just wanted to really read that part word for word because, again, like he says in the beginning of this book, as old as it is, if you are coming into this practice trying to scam or work your way around or control anything or anybody other than yourself, you'll be sad. It's just like with any other aspect of magic. And it takes me to my statement that I made in the beginning about sharing certain books that I have on my shelf. It was very early on in my journey, in my very early 20s, that I realized that we are responsible for the information that we put out into the world. And if we putting something out there that is harmful, it's just like every time it goes wrong, we are swinging the knife. You know what I mean? And so I didn't ever want to be responsible for someone taking something that I shared that was meant for good and use it in a way that was not. When I was raising my children, I always told them, and they will still tell you to this day, one of our sayings in our family is use your power for good and not for evil. And people will say, well, good and evil, two sides. Listen, they know what I meant, and they meant what, and then I meant what I said, and they knew it. And this is, it goes back to the do no harm. You know what I mean? This should be about, like everything else, this should be about self-refinement. This should be about, as it says, working on yourself, making yourself stronger. One of the things that I hadn't thought about before I got this book, that I didn't connect the two, should I say. I had thought about it because I know the mind is the builder, and I knew that we had the ability to heal. But I never thought that you could use hypnosis as a form of pain control and healing. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about how you can program your body to receive pain in a different way, or not at all. And so that kept my attention. And of course, spiritual contacts, being able to connect to your higher self, to your loved ones, things like that, being more in tune with your intuition, etc. Again, this book right here, picking it up and sharing it really reminds me of how desperate I was to know myself, and I think a lot of us come on this path, realizing that we don't know, realizing that we've been lied to, realizing that the people who were raising us still don't even know themselves, let alone us, and yet they set us on this trajectory to be this person that we probably wouldn't be if we knew who we actually were. And in hypnosis is one of those things that allows us to go in and see ourselves as a whole, as we used to be, as we are, and create who we want to be. And it creates a good practice. And I have to say that one of the things that's definitely necessary with this is, like many other things, is discipline and consistency. And I know in my younger days, I was not very consistent and I did not have a lot of discipline. I'm an air sign with fire all up in there. I'll be all over the place. You know what? My youngest son and daughter said that the thing they use to talk about me is that thing that be in front of the gas stations or the stores that be blowing like this, and it just be like, oh, la, la, la. They said that's who I am. They said mommy be all over, mommy be jiggling, and she got rhythm, but it's her own rhythm. And so when I was young, I was definitely not healed enough. And somebody would say, Well, that's the whole idea, is to get healed. You have to experience a certain level of healing to be able to experience a certain level of healing. And that's what I was talking about with the steps. You know what I mean? Because again, this takes focus and discipline. And if you don't have that, if you can't calm yourself enough to be able to sit for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, this is not going to work. You know, but again, one of the things that he implements in here is recording tapes to play for yourself. You know what I mean? And this helps you, you know, in your sleep state, you know, as you walk through the other states of consciousness. This is supposed to be able to help you to get down in there, recognize, assess, and either program or reprogram whatever's going on in the background to help you to be a better person. Because overeating, smoking, all of these different things have ties to them. It's a reason why people overeat. It's the reason why people smoke. It's the reason why people drink. It's the reason why they do drugs, why they're sexually promiscuous, why they, like, all these things have a root. And again, it's in that foundation. And again, it made me really conscious and aware when he talked about being mindful and taking a special slow and deliberate approach to helping people who have suffered severe traumas, you know, and that's PTSD, CPTSD. You know, these are people who have experienced things that reawakening and going back into these stages without proper preparation can leave you in a greater state of psychosis than, you know, than helping you. So this is my offering: hypnosis for beginners, reaching new levels of awareness and achievement. And what I tell people is, do go into this with the intention of helping yourself. And when you are able to help others, if you're able to help others, if it's nothing more than just sharing the name of the book, remember that this is not about you controlling. This is about you going in and getting to the root of your own issues and creating a better self, so you can in turn experience a better life. You know, this world has so many beautiful things to offer, and we miss so much because of the damage that was done to us early on in life, knowingly and unknowingly, from the continual bombardment of the BS that happens in daily life, and the fear mongering, and all these other things, the anger, the hatred, all of that, you know, makes it where it's almost impossible to enjoy the beauty in this world. So if you can do that by going in with self-hypnosis and begin to help you see the world, and, you know, for what it is, you don't want to delude yourself. You don't want to go in and say everything is perfect and I see everything. You don't want to delude yourself. You want to go in and be realistic, so you can face life on life's terms, and in turn create the life that you want to see. So Hypnosis for Beginners, William W. Hewitt.
Amazing.
So, I want to ask you your thoughts on this, because you have seen hypnosis live and in person recently. Not long ago. I haven't seen it live and in person for some time. I have a friend in Texas who is a master hypnotist, and we talk often about things like, in Unmasking Morality, we talked about, changing people's hatred to love. And is that an acceptable thing to do? What are the ethics of hypnosis? So we talk a lot about that type of thing, but I want to hear a little bit about what you think about this book, and also what your experience was like when you witnessed it in person.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, the book sounds very fascinating. Sounds like one that I would definitely read, that I'm interested in reading. and probably for the self-hypnosis aspects of it, just for my self-healing and both physical health and just to relax the mind and keep the mind centered and grounded, because it essentially sounds like a form of meditation or closely related to meditation, or there's some meditation that goes into hypnosis. And it also reminds me of, I believe this is a book that I brought to UnRead back in our early UnRead days. It was The Alchemy of Your Dreams, and the role of intention setting, because there's, from the passages that you read from the Hypnosis for Beginners, there's a portion of the process where you set an intention for what you want to do, and the same thing applies to dreaming and lucid dreaming specifically, is what the book talked about, and how you can exercise control over what you dream about by setting an intention, just as you're drifting off into that sleep state. So there's definitely some parallels in there. But yeah, my experience witnessing hypnosis happened this past December. Last December, I attended a show called High Prov, and High Prov is a combination of two words. It's the combination of hypnosis and improv. So to put it all together, this show was an improv under hypnosis show, in which you have an audience. The show was hosted by Colin Mockery from Whose Line Is It? And hypnosis, professional hypnosis, Assad Mechi. And the way it worked was, everyone that was at the show, obviously they brought a ticket to the show, and everyone was seated in the audience. And then the host, they called for, I believe it was 20 volunteers. So they called for 20 volunteers from the audience to come to the stage. A bunch of people ran out. I wasn't sure if I wanted to volunteer or not, because I didn't know what kind of stuff I'd be doing. But I mean, it was a bunch of people that wanted to volunteer anyway. So there was like a couple extra people that they had enough people, and they had to go back to the audience. And what's interesting is everything that Roo said about hypnosis, about people not being able to be hypnotized, and also people being able to fall right into hypnosis instantly, that's all true, because that's exactly what happened when I was watching the show. There was maybe like a couple of people, maybe one or two people, that they sent back to the audience, either because it was taking them too long to fall under the hypnosis, or it wasn't working for them, or they didn't relax themselves enough, or whatever the case was. There were a couple of people that were sent back to the audience because, for one reason or another, they didn't fall under hypnosis. And then it was through a process of elimination. They went from 20 people down to about, I think it was down to about 5 people that were part of the show for the rest of the program. And it was exactly as Roo described. They would be conscious, their normal selves, and then with the snap of the finger, they would fall under hypnosis. And and if you know how improv works, nothing is scripted. They're taking ideas from the audience. So the audience is throwing out the scenarios. So I remember one of the scenarios, it was like a Star Trek kind of theme, where they were in space, and there were these astronauts who were flying to this planet, I guess, to colonize this planet. And then when they got there, they were fighting against the aliens, but they were fighting with plungers. So the people are acting out all of this. People are acting out all of this. Also, there was a scenario where there was some type of lost object. They were looking for something. I can't remember what they were looking for, but it was like a weird object. Like it was their nose. I think that's what they were looking for. They were looking for their nose. So they had them. So people were like crawling around the stage, looking under the chairs. There were people. They were interviewing people and acting them how to telling them how they should act, what kind of temperament they should have. And people were acting everything out to a T, So, and I really thought they were under hypnosis. I didn't think it was scripted. I didn't think they pre-selected the people to get up there and pre-selected them as actors. I think it was truly hypnosis. So that was a very entertaining, to say the least, but just very fascinating of how fast people were able to fall under hypnosis. And even me sitting in the audience, even though I didn't fall under the hypnosis, I did, because there was some breathing and there was some frequencies being played too. So I did got into a meditative state myself, but I didn't quite get into hypnosis since I wasn't on stage and I wasn't like facing the hypnotist. So they were on stage and they were facing the hypnotist while the audience was back in the audience. So yeah, I definitely think it's real. I definitely think it can be used for healing. It can be used to improve one's life, and it's something that I want to look more into. I'm also familiar with using hypnosis for past life regressions. I actually came across a couple of people that do that. I know a friend of a friend that does it, past life regressions. So yeah, and I know people have used it for people who've claimed to be abductees. They go on the past life regression to remember their abductions. I remember the Hill family, the Barney and I forgot the Barney and Betty Hill, the couple that got abducted. They went on the past life regression. I remember watching their movie, a documentary about that. So yeah, it's all very interesting. But I definitely think it's valid,
Absolutely. It's interesting that you said that about the abductees and things like that. For those same reasons, like that type of scenario right there is part of what the explanation is in some of Dr. Newton's more clinical work that talks about working with people who have experienced things that they can't remember. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes remembering these things trigger other things, obviously, anxiety, etc. You know what I mean? Just the idea of knowing that without ever doing any hypnosis or reading a hypnosis book, just knowing that you have areas of your life sometimes you can't remember. You know what I mean? And we know that the mind works to protect you. So it done put that away somewhere. So a lot of times the question is, if my mind done put it away because it was too much for me to deal with, should I be going to look for it? You know what I mean? Like, What is that saying? You stare into the abyss long enough and stare back. Again, for somebody like me, I'm an Aquarian. I want to know. But I'm very mindful about how I go about unlocking information for myself, because again, if you already know that there are things that are going to be there, that are going to be something that's going to take some time to deal with, why just go cracking that open when you still trying to develop a steady nervous system? You know, it talked about the health and getting itself to this healthy state. That's important. You know, he talks about a woman who tripled her immune system. He talks about a man who was able to regulate his nervous system. You know, he used to have really bad anxieties. They found out a lot of the phobias, you know what I'm saying, claustrophobia, arachnophobia, all these different things come from, anxiety, you know what I mean? And so if they can get to the root of the anxiety, the root of the issue, why is this person claustrophobic? What closed space or thing happened to make them feel like everything is closing in on them and they start to panic, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing for being in large crowds. I know that for me, one of the things that plagued me a lot when I was young was social anxiety. I would be fine being out and I would look fine on the outside, but on the inside I was shaking like a leaf, and didn't know why. Didn't know why it was so hard for me to be around a lot of people. But then as I began to grow on my journey, and I'm always so grateful that my spiritual journey started so early, because it was important for me to understand my sensitivities, and not only my sensitivities, my gifts, being able to pick up on other people's feelings and emotions, and and knowing how to navigate that versus my own. What am I feeling of my own versus what am I feeling of somebody else's? And again, things like self-hypnosis can help the healers, people who are in the healing field, whether it's quote unquote traditional or non-traditional medicine. What it does is it allows the person to be able to put a barrier around themselves, to protect themselves, to be able to do the work that it takes to work out in the world with people and their stuff. It's just like a Reiki practitioner or a massage therapist, reflexologist. You are dealing with other people's energy, and being in other people's, very conscious states of being, and it's sensitive, and your ethics and everything have to be in order, and you have to have a certain level of healing in yourself to be able to truly be beneficial, to anyone.
Yep. Very
Yeah,
true.
like I said, this is, I picked this up not intended. I'll tell you, I done gave myself such a hefty reread list, man. Like, I pick up these books to go share them, and I'm like, damn, I remember why I got that book. Let me get back in that book again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You need it.
look, I tell you like this. Didn't I bring this one? I brought this one.
Yep, you
And
did.
now bring this one. This
Mm-hmm.
again, this, my journey has truly been about, and that's another Llewellyn book, by the way.
Yes.
My book, my journey and my books reflect the intentionality in me healing myself. That's what I can say about my book collection. Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm dead ass about healing myself. Like, I mean, going in and getting down to the nitty gritty, the parts I want to see, the parts I don't want to see. Hell, I don't even know what I don't want to see. I don't even know what I want to see. It's just in there. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
being on this path and being open and having the most tools available to be able to explore myself and explore my world helps. So, you take something. Now, let's say, how do I use these two books together, right? So let's say I'm working on, we were talking about the nervous system. I'm working on my nervous system. So I decide that I'm going to heal with the color yellow. So I'm going to put on some yellow pajamas, maybe a yellow t-shirt or a yellow head bow or something, a bracelet, something yellow, put a yellow stone under my pillow, what have you. I set my intentions on what healing I want. I create a voice recording talking about the healing I want to experience, reminding me of the color yellow, remind me of seeing the color yellow, what the color yellow represents. Why again am I here? Why am I doing this work? What do I want to go in and root out? What do I want to go in and put in? And that's a full session. You do that while you're sleeping. And somebody say, well, how do you know if it works? How do you know if it don't if you don't try it? Again, we let outside doctors in the world experiment on us, and we don't experiment on ourselves. We're afraid of ourselves. And and even that is something to address in self-hypnosis, is not being afraid of your own power. And many of us were taught to be afraid of our own power, especially people that look like you and me. We have a different level of power. We have access to different things. Just the melanin in our skin, the richness of melanin in our skin gives us access to and information that other people are not privy to. I remember being in school and looking at all the lines on my hands. I have very wrinkly hands, and I remember one of the other kids in my class, their hands were so smooth, like they didn't have wrinkles all up in here and everything. And I remember asking my science teacher about it, and they told me how much more rich my ancestry was, because locked between each one of these little lines is DNA that's connected to ancient times. And it's like, it's so much information locked in your body that it would take you lifetimes to know who you are. So, I mean, even that in itself, being told that at a young age, I knew that there was more to me than what I could see. I just didn't know how to get to it. And hypnosis, very well may be one of those things that help to unlock that for someone who is seeking to know more about themselves. Like I said, I was desperately seeking myself, and it was, I wasn't quitting until I found out. And that's why I'm still on this journey now, because I still don't know. I'm still unfolding. I'm still blooming. I'm still growing. And I love every bit of it. So, again, you want a good one, y'all? Hypnosis for Beginners. Yep. Mr. Hewitt, William Hewitt. Nick will link that information right down in the bottom, along with his offering from Brother Gandhi. And we and again, isn't that self-help work too? You know what I mean? Is being the change you want to see. Then he said, yes, that's one of his most famous. That's one of his most famous quotes: being the change you want to see. And you can only do that if you go in and do the work and you heal. And make it so. So, and again, Nick, thank you for sharing your experience with hypnosis. I haven't, like I said, I do have a friend who is a master hypnotist, and we talk a lot about the ethics of it and what he's been able to do for himself and for others, and how many of his colleagues use the work as well. And so, it's interesting. It's interesting to know that people are walking around here and they're master hypnotists and you don't know it. So you ask yourself sometimes, is it some mass hypnosis going on? Because it talks about mass hypnosis, group hypnosis. It talks about hypnotizing children. It's a lot of ethical and deep conversations that need to be had about that, especially because we in a world and we are in a space to know that we have been indoctrinated and programmed, and not for our own good. Knowing that, and knowing that there's a way to go in and fix that, I mean, I think that's a recipe for spending some time together right there.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, and I forgot to mention one of my favorite episodes of the original Scooby-Doo was that clown, that clown at the circus that was trying to hypnotize. Now that evil clown, he was using the hypnosis for evil, for wrong. You know, talking about when we talk about you know, the morality of it. That clown was very evil, but
Very.
one of my favorite episodes. I have to say.
Yes, you know, and I mean, I'll say this. You know, I know a lot of us come from the no snitching space. You know, I'm not here to debate that. That is what it is. What I will say is it took a lot of courage, especially way back when he blew the whistle on that psychiatrist, the psychologist.
Oh, yeah.
But can you imagine sending your loved one to a psychologist with a very real problem and they're being masterly manipulated through the healing that they are trusting in? That is a lot. That's just like some of the situations we've had where dentists has put people under anesthesia and been less than ethical, or same thing with surgeons and all these different things. It's like when you put your health, no matter what aspect of it, financial, emotional, physical, spiritual, whatever, you put your health in someone else's hands, that is the most vulnerable that you are. You know what I mean? You are so open, you know, and one of the things it did mention in here is that the majority of his clients were female. Men don't want to remember, is what he basically was saying. He said men are like, hey, look, it happened. Apparently I got over it. Why am I going to revisit it? It's only going to get my way. Da, 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 da. You know, and some women feel that way, but a lot of times more men feel that way. And I know that has a lot to do with the secret, you know, suffering that goes on in the community of our men, you know, young and old. And I just, if I had, you know, I can't say one wish because I got a bunch of them, but it would be my desire to see, you know, as people are now accepting that men need a safe space to express themselves and young boys need to be able to be heard, and lots of things are happening in their world that we never thought about. I think it's important to remind people of some of these more holistic ancient techniques to be able to get to the root of your own problem. Because if you're not going to talk to nobody, that's fine. But don't lie to yourself. Don't keep telling yourself that you well and you know you're not. Especially if it's some things that you can do in private. Nobody has to know that you're working on yourself with any of these things. You know what I mean? You just work on yourself. And what I can promise you is, even if every technique is not for you, because everything doesn't work for everybody, but what it will do is it'll give you an opportunity to slow down enough to know that, hey, this is something I'm interested in working on in myself. And I tried this way, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, or maybe it led me to something else that did work. You know, so we have to remain open. We have to remain honest with ourselves that the healing never stops.